Justin.
Okay.
Please turn on your microphones.
Oh.
I'm on.
I'm calling the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome everybody.
Looks like I don't have a microphone, but that's okay.
Well, I'll just move
You want
this
some
over
of
here.
mine?
Okay.
We can grab one of the student ones.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here, all two of you. And Liana Woods, one of our student reps, is she's having dinner with family from out of state tonight, so that's why she's not here. Not sure about Aaliyah, but she might be on and off and away to college.
Stanford bound,
Yeah, and we do have a new student rep that's coming on board. His name is Morgan Thomas. So hopefully we'll get to meet him in the next couple of months.
He's going to plan on joining us in the September meeting at the
Okay.
start of the school year.
All right, thank you. Right now, we are at approval of the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as given.
Is there any discussion? No? All five of us are here. This is exciting. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Public comments on agenda items. Jackie, were there none? Okay. So now we are at student board member comments, and there's none of those either. Board member comments. Arla.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of attending graduation on Friday, and it was a wonderful ceremony. It was so exciting. And the speeches were really great this year. Liana and I choked up at a couple of them. Yeah, it was just so exciting. I love graduation, so that was really cool to be a part of that. Other than that, I've just been involved. The marketing subcommittee for the levy committee has met in person in the last month and been a part of those discussions, and that's been great. And also attended some of the virtual levy committee meetings that have also been going well. So that's my update.
Okay. And Art.
First, I'd just like to say, like you already did, it's really nice to have all five of us here. In a certain sense, that makes us whole again, which has had meanings for us in the past, different meanings for us in the past. Anyway, I don't have very much to report other than because I did not get to go to graduation for the first time, and I don't remember how. I mean, there were a couple I missed when I was first on the board. But back then we didn't all go on those graduations, and then, but in our time, the three of us who came, all together, this was the first one I missed, and I missed it because the Girl Scouts are reopening, and I had a whole bunch of people that I had to check in, and the people that would normally I could find to substitute for me were unavailable or drafted elsewhere, so I was out of luck.
Well, we missed you.
But thank you for telling me how it went afterwards. So I missed that. But the only other thing I really have done regarding the school stuff is also quite important, and I have somewhat to thank not just myself, but all the other people who were helping me with scholarships, including Tom Moreland, where we were doing after the fact the interviews for kids who don't do scholarships, who get an award that's named for a former teacher, Gordon Monton, who gave the Kiwanis Club a whole bunch of money to support kids for regular scholarships, but also for awards. He said, don't use the word scholarship, but awards for kids who are not going to college or doing something else, trade, careers, et cetera, et cetera. And we interviewed several kids, and we selected 4, and we have 4 of those that are receiving awards that were not part of the award ceremony that happened before the last board meeting. But that was the work that I've been doing, and I have to tell you, that is fun work, as Tom can also attest to that. Interviewing those kids, we did it right here, and one of them was on a telephone call. It's just really fun. You get to know somebody more than just a piece of paper or whatever. It's very rewarding. So that's my report.
Okay, thanks, Art. Leanna.
Well, two things. So the graduation, we were on the wet end from crying, and that was it. It was amazing, and I was so happy to see them getting to sit down and not have to do the walkthrough and that. I know 5th grade, my son graduated 5th grade, and they did do a walkthrough. Well, they actually didn't do a walkthrough. They drove up, we drove up, and then they passed their stuff through the window, and they got a little necklace, and I cried through the whole thing. And I'm such a wiener. But we got to the end, and he was like, oh, and some kids got to meet at the end, the friends. They went off and took pictures, so I'm kind of sad that he didn't get to meet up with them. But he is ready. My second thing was that we made an appointment with Mirka Kerstad over here at the middle school, and met with her for me and him just alone. Nobody else is in the school. And we got to tour the whole school, just room by room, everything, and he was so excited. I mean, when we got there, he's like, Mom, this is all you. You made me do this, and I really don't want to do this. And we got in there, and we got through everything. He got to see the math room and the science room, and he was nuts. He could not wait to see those. And then language arts and, like, artsy stuff. I don't know how he ended up my son. He's not into the artsy and the writing, but through the whole thing, the payoff was, my long story shorter, the payoff was the day after, he's sitting in his bedroom, and he calls me in there, and he just wants to tell me how excited. He goes, I am so excited for middle school. And I cried again. So, got the Mother of the Year award on my wall now. So it was very exciting. So, yeah, we're done with elementary. He's very mature for a young man, and he likes to build computers. He does it by himself and just puts them together, and I'm, thank God. He's interesting. So,
Well, thank you.
That's it.
John?
Well, I got three things to report. One, I still don't have anything on the screen. It says Microsoft update required, update Teams, so whatever that means. The first thing is graduation. Friends, I just got to tell you, I'm a veteran of many graduations at many different schools. I thought this was a class act. It was, of course, it was a first for us. I mean, I was really proud to be there. This is the refurbished stadium. Mm-hmm. And it was clear leadership to call it, we're going to war no matter whether it rains or not. You know, and so I thought that that was great. It just looked nice. It was really university class. You know, I've never had a university with that graduated on the football field was so good. And then there's we got that mascot out there. And when people come through the thing, this isn't the Century First ceremony, but there are some medieval ceremonies on which I'm a reactionary. And I really think there's a place for dignity in education, and this is it. And we can have it marked with levity, and there was plenty of that. And it wouldn't, so it's not too stiff. But I thought the ceremony was exceptionally well planned and exceptionally well executed. And I say that as a veteran of them, seen these things at 3 different universities, and this compares with any graduation I've seen. So I think our team did a splendid job. I thought the kids were great. You know, you can't get rid of the seriousness, and that was observed. But the levity is part of it too. We're human beings. And I took a bunch of pictures and wrote up a little thing on Facebook. Man, I got 37 likes. And I just thought it was great. So the other thing is I got a report from my minder, otherwise known as my spouse, about an event that she saw online and is relevant to us. There was a meeting of the group that is concerned with substance abuse and mental issues. And Brooke listened to that and gave me a report. The key takeaway was that there's a difference between the concerns of adults and the concerns of school kids. And there were several North Mason kids that were part of this. And the event is supposed to be posted online at KMAS, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. It's a couple of days ago since this thing happened. But I was glad to, hear that report, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Well, I also attended the awards night for scholarships, and I think you were there too, Art.
Yes,
And it was pretty spectacular. Our kids took home over $250,000 in scholarships. We, as a foundation, were able to give out $86,000, but that is, if you want to have a good cry, that's a really good night to go to.
Next time.
And I went, of course, to the graduation, and I was so impressed with the way the high school, and I hope that you tell them this too, set that up and made that happen, and to just be there and see what it's gonna be next year. I hope we have it in the stadium again.
Yeah.
And I hope all the chairs are spread out, even if they don't have to be, because that gave significance to every single student. And they came in and walked the whole track around and came back through the big old inflated bulldog and down. And I'd just like to mention that our educators typically wear their robes from their school of graduation, and they couldn't this year because Jostens, where the robes come from, couldn't turn them around quick enough in terms of the COVID protocol.
Oh.
So they couldn't have their robes there. Maybe a couple of them had their robes on, maybe they keep them. But anyway, I'm sure that will be there next year. But it was fabulous. The music, fabulous. And you guys talk about crying on your end. I just had him in between. And I think he was too. Anyway, it was really a great night, and I just really applaud the high school staff for pulling that off.
I would just like to thank God for stopping the rain just for the graduation,
I know.
and then it just poured, so,
Yeah.
amen.
All right, we are now at the consent agenda.
I'd like to move we approve the consent agenda as given.
Okay, is there any discussion? Art,
Curious enough, I only have one, and it's really going to be short.
okay,
And it is under the agreements and contracts. And I'll just relate briefly that I got very fooled by the third one down called fuel education. And when I was looking at that, I was really looking for something that had to do with buses. And if maybe you could just explain to me that it's not buses.
No, Fuel Ed provides curriculum for our online learning experience for our elementary school children. And so as we're continuing HomeLink offerings in the fall, the contract is to continue that online curriculum for those students.
As I figured out, it's really just the name of a company.
Yes.
But boy, fuel education, okay.
I have a question.
That's all I had.
Arla?
I'm just was curious, the voucher that goes to North Mason High School for all of the, looks like fines that the students have, I guess I don't understand that process, why we would write a check to the high school.
We do that for transparency purposes when it comes to accounting, to ensure that we're not crossing our funds by doing transfers in-house, but it's actually being vetted through the entire check process, so that it's easy to track the approval process and all of that, versus an accountant just doing an entry in the books to move money around.
So these students all paid those fines, those are paid fines.
Correct,
I
but,
see,
but
okay.
it's not necessarily the students paying it. It could be InvestEd
Oh,
technically paying the
okay.
funds,
Okay.
or it could be other grant funding that has been received by the district that helps offset costs for low-income students.
I see. And then that money comes into us and then we are cutting a check to the high school?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Good question.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, it's been moved to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. And now we are at item 3, the 21-22 superintendent contract. And I asked Jackie to include the annual summative evaluation as well as the monitoring reports, just to be completely transparent about how we determine the superintendent's renewal or non-renewal. And in this case, we did renew her contract for 3 years, and she chose to not negotiate an increase in her salary based on our current financial situation. So I am going to entertain a motion to approve or not the superintendent's contract.
I motion that we approve the superintendent's contract as presented.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we are at number 4, WASDA Legislative Representative, and currently it's Leanna, and her term is for another year till 2022. Does the director want to stay on or switch directors?
I started off with it pretty strong, and it started with COVID. So I got into it with Zoom, and I was zooming, and then it's been the past few months, things have, so I can take it for another year and be better. I know that they slow down, they don't actually slow down, they just work. But, and John was not interested. Is anybody interested currently?
I'm interested, but I'm restraining myself.
I honestly, I believe that your first year was really clouded
Yeah.
because of COVID.
Here, here.
So you were not really in a position to be able to go meet with those other legislative representatives, which is really an education in itself. Zoom is fine, but, you know, face-to-face interactive
Yeah.
meetings are really, really positive.
I thought it was a really good way to meet everybody, though, because you got to see them without any of the. Nobody was nervous. Everybody was sitting in their front room with. I swear nobody was wearing pants. You know what I mean? Like everybody's wearing a shirt, and they're all comfortable drinking their coffee, and it was really good. So it was good work. But yeah, if I will definitely take it again.
Good.
Okay.
That's all I
Good.
need to hear. So this is really not an action item. Okay. And we'll move on to board development and linkage with the superintendent update.
There's some discussion, there was gonna be discussion on the conference.
Oh,
right
that's
there.
right.
Yeah, we gotta
Thank
do
you.
that one.
Thank you. Right, I got the email that said we really need to decide whether or not we're going to go, because we have to make reservations and registrations. And my initial reaction, again this year, is because we don't have a levy in place and because we don't have an idea of what will happen this fall, I personally can take myself out of it. I've been there a million times. But I think it's really important for the new board member to go and the legislative rep to go.
Yeah, I had questions about how, well, this is like knock on wood if I'm elected by then, but do you guys typically go overnight, and then is it typically you go every single day?
Is it in Bellevue or?
It's Bellevue.
Thank God.
Yeah.
They
so-
make us fly to Spokane.
So
Duh.
it would be a question of, I mean, you could bring Oz.
Yeah.
You might need to,
Let me
if
look
that's
at
the
this.
situation then.
I feel, if I can mention, I feel that if in the evening, because you get to choose, really choose to go to the sessions. If there's like something that, I think they're over around 5 or 6, and then there's like, you know, dinner and stuff like that. So if you needed to go home from there, because of baby time, you know, and
Well,
family
okay.
time.
I think, honestly, I feel like your family could come with you.
Oh, really?
You went.
My husband and my son did one
Yeah.
year. They
So
did really good. So.
I just think, well, I've already
I-
told you what I think.
I'm open, I'm definitely interested. I was looking at there was like a pre-conference too that I was particularly interested in because it was the boot camp.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so I just didn't know if it was something where you typically go every day.
We do, we
Yes,
go
there's
every
things
day. There are sessions all day long,
Mhm, I see that,
and
yeah.
they're good sessions. And the one positive, really positive thing about the conference is that that's when all 5 of us can get together and have discussions and conversation without taking action or taking, you know, anything like that.
Of course, no work is done, but we just get to enjoy
Yeah.
each other.
So that would be the one detriment for not all of us going.
And the new board member,
Boot camp.
boot camp, it's worth it. And you sit around with people that are all kind of still questioning themselves, and then that you get to like hear somebody, and then you get to ask questions. And, I mean, you don't get the full, the full feel goods till the end, and then you're kind of like, wow, I'm part of this, so it's pretty cool. I liked it.
Have we ever sent our student board members? I'm looking
Yes.
at seeing the
Yeah.
student rates,
We have.
wow.
Spencer went a couple years, and
They were going to go last year.
yeah,
Was it in does it rotate every year,
yes,
Spokane,
it goes
Bellevue?
Spokane and then back to Bellevue.
Well, this would be the year for me to do it, just because of the timing of it. At my job, it's usually a very bad time, but I know we're not gonna have a fundraiser this year for the hospital foundation, so. I'm interested, and I think even if I don't get elected, then what happens? That
new
person
The other
coming on
person
would
would
still
go.
be a
Yep.
new
If
board
they
member.
choose
If
to
they
go.
choose to go.
Yeah, they might not choose to go.
Yeah.
Art, your feelings?
Yeah, it's very well worth going to, even after I had gone to so many of them that I thought, well, they can't possibly come up with new things. They do come up with new things, but even going through some of the other things, again, is worth it. Plus, nowadays, this wasn't true some years ago, nowadays they're also making all school board members in the entire state have to take the course on, help me with this.
Equity.
Equity.
Well, equity,
That
the
one,
other
but
one,
the
the
other
legal
one too,
legal
Open Public
requirements.
Meetings
Yeah,
Act.
right.
The
Open Public
Open
Meetings
Open
Act.
Public
Meetings
Meetings
Act.
Act, and that's a certification thing that we have to have.
Oh, yeah, you
get.
gotta do it right there.
And you can do it right there, and that's the best place to do it with.
Yeah, no, it
this-
sounds very
with them.
valuable.
And that's also worth it. That one's worth going to over and over again.
I think I'm due.
I think we probably all are, but we can do it online too.
Yeah.
Right.
John, your feelings?
I can't do it this year,
Okay.
but I approve of it.
I do too, and
And
it's
it's
a,
November,
So I've got open
I don't-
19th through 20th.
yeah.
The
20, okay.
pre-conference is the Thursday, November 18,
Mhm.
and so the 3 pre-conferences, so you can only pick one, then I take it. It's
If
kind
it's
of
all
like,
day.
okay, so there's the board boot camp, the power of student voice, and a law conference.
The law conference is all day.
Yes, it is all day.
It looks like they're all
Yeah.
from 11 to 4:30.
Oh, okay.
The benefit
I
of
didn't hear that
multiple of us
November-
going. Sorry, it's 19 through 20, and then the 18th is the pre-conference.
That's right. Yeah, and that's usually my slow time for my shop, so it's easy.
Great.
Well, I would really like to go because of the emphasis on equity. I think this is
You
An
can go to the
important-
pre-conference.
yeah. and
You could
impor-
go to that.
We are also going to be doing, providing professional development on equity that the board would be invited to attend this year, so.
Okay.
Is that in August, the 3
Yeah.
PD days?
An important issue, potentially hot button, is something about which we should be prepared to answer questions. And I include myself.
It's a wonderful opportunity to network with other school boards from other school districts. And you learn a lot from them, and, you can exchange thoughts and ideas and information. It's really, that's my main reason ever for going. I mean, the workshops are good, and the must-do workshops are great, but I pick up a lot from those other school districts. So, okay, so you would go and you would go.
Okay.
Okay? Does
Yeah.
that sound right? And the rest of us are not going in light of the current financial situation in the school district.
And just so we're transparent for the meeting and if anybody's listening, we're talking about, so it's the regular rate, right? It's 185 for a pre-conference and 515 for
The whole
the
conference.
whole
Yeah.
conference. If you pay before September 25th.
Yes.
Right.
They have some really nice pens at various exhibits.
Oh,
too.
girl,
Keep
we're
a-
gonna get some
Keep a,
pens.
keep a sharp eye out for those things.
That's my
Okay,
favorite part.
Okay, out of control.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so now
Out of control.
we're back to the superintendent update.
All right, and we will start with the budget status report, and we have a bittersweet moment tonight. This will be Ashley's last meeting to attend, and our first meeting with Vietnam, our new finance director.
Welcome.
Hi.
So we're going to do it a little bit differently tonight. This is our only meeting that we're gonna have an overlap. And so Vedant's been working quite diligently on getting to know Forecast 5 and how to use the reporting software that we've all become accustomed to. And so she's gonna be going through our month-end reports with you for the month of May. And then I'll be assisting or interjecting when I need to put in some additional information. And so I'll let Vietnam start. Normally, we start with the other funds, and so that's what Jackie has up currently. So you'll start with that one.
Okay.
Okay.
I would do my best to present this one. Okay, hang on.
No pressure.
Yeah,
Let me play catch up here.
there you go.
Okay, so these are our separate funds. So capital project fund for May, we are, oh, I'm sorry, I should explain. This is our fund balance, right, for the month of, for each month of the year. So May, our fund balance went slightly down for capital projects, most likely because we were working on some projects. Our debt service fund is up at 2.2 million versus 1.8. Our ASB is 404,000. And then our transportation fund is, there was no spending there, so we should be at 180.
And we did make our debt service payment on June 1st, so that nice $2.2 million number dropped significantly with our payment. But our fund is still sitting with enough to ensure that we have balance to make our next debt payment here in 6 months. There was actually a very interesting situation that had arisen, and Mason County had an issue with their bank. Mason County is technically who makes our bond payments for us, and the bond payments technically didn't get made by them on time. But all school districts are part of the school bond guarantee program if you go through voted debt, and there's a reason. So if there's a bank snafu, state pops in and covers your bond payment. Which is what happened. It wasn't just us, it was all Mason County districts except for Merriam Knight, because Merriam Knight doesn't have voted debt. So we're covered, and then technically we repaid the state for what they did making the payment for us. So that's all been solidified and fixed. And then on the capital project side, we had a payment go out to a vendor for the ramp at the softball field. And we're currently still sitting on those funds. We have a meeting with Dana next week to discuss next steps for capital projects for the district in the coming year, with the $500,000 remaining in that fund.
And the transportation vehicle fund, is there a plan to spend
Yeah.
some money there?
There's not necessarily a plan to spend money. There's a plan to save money. So we are getting our depreciation payment in August. It's better if you purchase buses in groups of at least 3. Now, the cost of a large bus is right there at around $180,000, so obviously we don't have enough to do that yet. So we're going to be banking our depreciation dollars over the course of the next 2 years, and then placing an order, a larger order for bus replacement. But if you'll remember back at the beginning of this year, we had placed the order for the smaller buses, and we got those. And so right now we're sitting with a very healthy fleet of buses as far as the age. And so we're sort of long-term planning now for bus replacement.
Okay, thank you.
What was the issue with the county? Just some type of glitch?
Yeah, it was apparently a glitch. So everything's done via remote transfers. And from what we've been told, the bank that Mason County Treasurer works with, they had sent the electronic file, but there was some type of miscommunication as to whether or not it was actually received. And these type of electronic cash files have to be received by a specific time frame, like we're talking by the minute. Like when we do our ACH payments for payroll, they have to be received by 3/27. If you go 3/28, you've missed your deadline. And so it was one of those situations. It was a few minutes late and it did not get paid out in time.
Interesting. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. Okay, so this one is our enrollment projected versus actual being blue. This entire chart makes sense because we have a decrease in enrollment this year, particularly in May, which is based off of May 31st. We are on the same trend, same pattern, so there's nothing unusual about this.
One of the positive things to report with this that I was pleasantly happy to see is, if you remember from past years, your trend from basically January to the end of the year, your enrollment starts to decline. Not a lot, a few each month due to early high school graduations. And our trend did not decrease. We went up a few each month. It showed that as we brought back different tiers and grades bands of students, we got more students back that had originally disenrolled from the district. So that's actually positive information and trends to see when we start looking at a full return next year and what we can anticipate as far as our enrollment.
Are you basing your projections for next year on the actual enrollment this year?
No, Dana and I had met and we actually discussed our enrollment trends going into next year quite extensively. We decided to go with a more conservative approach when it comes to our enrollment trend just because of the situation we dealt with this year. So we are building a budget around an enrollment of 2,210 FTE for next school year. Now, what I will say is last year, prior to the pandemic, we were at 2,334 student FTE. So 2,210 is still obviously a fairly significant decrease from the prior year, but taking a more conservative approach because we simply don't know what's going to happen as far as the actual requirements. Are there still going to be mask requirements? Are parents going to be comfortable sending their kids back? Are they not going to be comfortable? What age are is the vaccines going to drop to? Is it going to stay at 12, or are they going to be able to vaccinate younger kids? We decided that a more conservative approach was better versus getting into a situation where we had budgeted for a higher enrollment, anticipating more kids returning, getting those dollars in from the state, and then being back in the recovery situation that we dealt with this year with the state. So we will be budgeting at only 2,210, and then crossing our fingers and hoping that when our doors open come September, that we can welcome all 2,334 plus of our students back.
That would be wonderful.
What, that's still slightly more than how, the actuals that we have right
Exactly.
now. What's some of the discussion that you guys had, and, what makes you believe that we'll have even that slight bump than what we are
A part of
seeing?
it is our slight increase in trend as we started bringing kids back, and we saw that upward movement because we did have early graduates this year. So when
I
you're
see,
seeing the increase of just 2 or 3 per month, it was 2 or 3 in addition to what we lost at the high school level.
I see.
So our trends did actually increase in all reality by 10 to 12 each month, because we did lose students for other reasons as well. So that's a positive trend that we were actually looking at. And then when we start looking at the number of younger elementary students, kindergarten, first grade, that once school was open again, the increase at those levels, the hope is that next year we're able to, the parents that had, let's say, held back their kindergarten age kid and said, we'll just wait another year before we send them, that we'll see those kids come back into that first grade level. And then we welcome in the new kindergarten class, and we'll see that increase. the increase to 2,210 is still fairly conservative, considering what our trend looked like this year.
It's really only 20 FTE. I think that was a
Yeah.
good move.
Yep. We didn't want to put ourselves in a position where we would over budget revenue and anticipate and staff based
Absolutely.
upon an increased FTE that we didn't potentially see.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Are you sure you don't want to attend next month's board meeting with me?
I will have multiple board meetings that I will be attending.
I'm just kidding.
We can put her on speakerphone in that way.
I'll get better over time.
You're
Um,
doing great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with the revenues. Top left, you'll see a red radio button. That is telling us that we are projected to be at 68%, bringing in revenue at 68% of revenues, but we are also at 68%, and this is great because we lost some revenues with the student enrollment decline, but then we also we're able to offset that with a couple other things, so like grants, ESSER, all of that. So this is great for us. The purple radio button talks about our local sources. We were projected to have 56% of revenues in. We're at 81%. And actually, I think this has something to do with the half-year levy, right?
Correct,
Yes, okay.
exactly,
Perfect.
because it trends back 4 years.
Mhm.
And for the prior 4 years, we've always had an October and an April collection. And unfortunately, this year, we only had our October collection. So budget-wise, which is what that top circle is going off of, budget-wise, it's saying, hey, you've collected way more than what you would normally collect during this period, when it's comparing it to the budgeted amount of the 2.3 million, but it's because we only had the part-year collection.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, the blue radio button is our state sources. We projected year-to-date we'd be at 69%. We are at 64%. This makes sense. We are, it's consistent with our enrollment decrease. So, of course, with a decrease in enrollment, we'll be bringing in less money, particularly from the state. The green radio button is our federal sources. We projected year-to-date we would be at 68%. We are at 97%. This definitely makes sense because we brought in a ton of ESSER dollars, which is from our federal source. So that's great for us.
You're gonna see that circle next month be way over 100% because all of the work we've been doing in the business office recently has been to put us in a position to make a significant claim against our ESSER $2 to help us get through that October lack of a levy collection. And we were successful in making a $1.5 million claim on expenditures the district has already paid. So that $1.5 million that's coming will sit in the fund balance then and offset those fall expenditures to make sure everything's good when it comes to paying vendors and payroll, opening up for the beginning of the school year, and that transition process.
Okay. Okay, so now we are looking at expenditures. The first green radio button, this is showing where year-to-date, I'm sorry, not year-to-date, we are projected, hang on, it's coming to me. It was so graceful in my head.
That's our end.
Oh, that's right,
year-end fund
that's right.
balance.
Okay, this is our year-end fund balance. And currently we are projected to be at 10%, and this is great because we want to be at 10%, or between 8 and 10%. So as long as we continue to
Bring in more revenues, decrease expenditures, we'll stay at that 10% threshold. That 10% is what I've been pushing all year long and hitting home, that we have to be by 10% by September, and we're at 10%. So
That's right where we want you to be. Thank you very much.
Yep, so now we just need to stay there over the course of the summer, and we'll be good to go.
Is that actually telling us that we're right now at 10%?
Yes, and you're gonna see it in the next, well, it's, so technically what that's telling you is that where we're going to be in August is at 10%. Right now, based upon my most recent ESSER claim, we're technically a bit over 10%
We'll
right
see
now.
the number when the other chart.
Yep, but you're gonna see on that,
Okay,
that
wow,
month-end
that's
chart
impressive.
where we are.
It's very impressive.
It really is. Okay. For our red radio button, we were projected to have to have spent 75%. We are at 70%. This also makes sense because with less enrollment, there wouldn't be a need to expend as much. So that is that makes sense. For our salary and benefits, purple radio button, we projected 74%. We're right at 73%. For the blue radio button, we projected 74%. We're at 71%, and likewise, this is our basic education expenditure. So again, that makes sense because with decrease in enrollment, there was a decrease in basic ed, so anything from the state.
And that was one of the areas that we really focused on this year is we decreased our revenue collection due to the decreased enrollment, making sure that we did an offset with decreased expenditures and managing all of our purchasing to offset those
Right,
decreases.
so those two are also in another way of looking at it, it's a function of belt tightening.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is my favorite chart, I love it.
Me too, actually. When I started studying for it, I was like, oh, I see why you like it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one, this is a great one. So our current year, we are at the top one, so the solid blue line. What we always want to look for is we want to make sure that we're being somewhat consistent with previous years. So currently for May, we are at 2.9 million in our fund balance, and this is where we, or this chart, this graph shows where our fund balance is at each month. So what we want to pay attention to is at the far right side where it's 3.2 million. We want to make sure that as long as we are trending the way we are right now, we are going to be right at that amount, which is going to give us our 10% fund balance at the end of the year in order to move forward.
Remember that green triangle? You're not seeing it right now because our blue line is over it.
Yay!
And that's exactly what we were trying for.
Nice.
So getting those additional federal dollars in, looking for the additional grants, and anything we could claim against, we've been able to mitigate that gap we've been trying to cover for the last few months.
Okay. Oops, I'm so sorry. Okay. So this is our just a basic overview of our general fund. What I want to point out is our total revenue. We are okay. I need help with this.
That's fine. So what we're focusing on with this chart is basically where we have lost revenue over the course of the year based upon that variance column in the far right side, and where we have cut costs to offset that lost revenue in the expense side. So we started with a $3.8 million revenue deficit due to the decreased enrollment. We've been chipping away at that revenue deficit. Now, the $1.5 million claim that I just did yesterday is not included up there on the revenue side. So ESSER is not trending in any of these areas because ESSER was not available during the budget process last summer. So when we add in that $1.5 million claim that I just did, that's going to offset that $2.2 million revenue deficit. Then you start looking at the expenditure side and you see sort of where we're trending over for our variances on that side. When you net those together, it comes down to the fact that we're seeing $1 million, just over $1 million deficit this year, based upon the belt tightening, like Art said, that we've done. And now that $1.5 million claim is coming in to fill the gap. That was the important piece, is getting those dollars in to be able to mitigate that loss. Because as a district with no local levy, we have no room in the budget to be in a deficit, because we're not going to be collecting anything else. So we had to make sure that we could fill it with something else to get through the lack of an October collection, and we've been able to do that now.
Great.
And so that's the last slide for that one. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Well, once again, good job, good job.
Here, here.
And I'm hoping that there is a way to translate this information into an understandable base that we can post it on the website.
Mhm.
Because I think it's really important that the ESSER dollars came in, yes, we did get them. But they only filled the gap that the levy left.
Exactly.
So I think that would be really important to emphasize that, so people understand that we're not rich. We're not
No.
getting richer because of ESSER dollars at all. And there are many ties to those dollars.
Well, and just like you said, Laura, like, yes, the ESSER came in and filled that gap from the loss of the local levy, but we still had the loss from the enrollment decline.
Right.
And that's where the district and the leadership team and the administrators came together, and we mitigated those losses and found other ways to cut costs, because we knew ESSER could only cover so much with those limitations.
Right.
It was definitely interesting even trying to come up with allowable costs that we could transfer over to the ESSER side, because you can't double dip in different funding sources. But as a team, we were able to do it in a way to be able to preserve the financial integrity of the district going into next year, to give our students the best education possible in the current climate.
Right, right. Well, and the enrollment decline actually translates to about $1.5 million, $1.8 million.
Technically, the enrollment decline led to a $3.8 million revenue
Okay.
loss between general apportionment and categorical funding losses.
Okay,
So
Wow.
what we were able to do was cut other costs on our expense side to help mitigate some of that loss. And then we just came up with that $1 million shortfall that needed to be filled with other revenues.
wow.
If I could make just one comment, this is technically out of order, but I think this is such an important theme, it's worth considering for whoever's writing the next board letter. Something really concise,
Leanna,
because misunderstandings between ourselves and the public can happen easily. And I think we need to be candid and very clear about what our finances truly are, because the impression is so easy to make that, oh, they're wallowing in money. No, we are not.
Yeah, there
And
are some
here
districts
is
that
the
are.
reason why.
Yep,
We're running a tight ship, and here is how things are going. That message is really important for us to communicate to the public, and I think particularly at this time.
exactly.
Thank you.
I agree, John.
thank you, both of you.
Yep.
The team.
Good job.
Good job,
team.
guys.
Okay, Superintendent Rosenbach?
Yes, I will have just a little bit additional, but our next presentation is from Tom Moreland, our Special Programs Director, and he's gonna talk about some preschool things that are happening.
Where do you want me to go? Just,
You can just,
all right. Actually, I was glad, I don't have any radio dials. Nothing like that. I just wanted to have a conversation really, and I'm gonna talk a bit about, I was gonna go ahead and go through the history, and I thought, no, I'm gonna start with next year. So, let's move forward with preschool. I don't know how much you know about preschool, so I want you to just chime in at any time if you have a question about what I'm gonna talk about. So, preschool is a very different animal than K-12. There's a lot of different moving parts to it. So our part is a special ed And it has its own little qualifying categories, and we've operated that program for years and years and years. 5 years ago, Dana asked if we could move it from the elementary schools where it was housed and start the Feller Early Learning Center. So that's been the process over the last 5 years. Next year, we will have probably 4 kids that we qualify through the course of the year in our developmental preschool. That's where the numbers have been. Actually, they've grown since we moved to the preschool. So we'll have that program. We also blend with ECAP. ECAP is a state-funded preschool program. And that's primarily for folks with lower income, but they can also take on families that have higher income if they have a student with disability. So we team with them, and they will have a classroom next year. And then we started last year, the state calls it transitional kindergarten. We call ours early entrance kindergarten. And that is a kindergarten program for 4-year-olds that will be 5 years old at the next September. And so we recruit those students and start them. We've been starting them in January the last 2 years. Then they are in full-time as best we could this year, but last year was 5 days a week, full days of a preschool kindergarten program preparing those kids. They have to have some deficit, but it's not to the extent that developmental preschool. So we've got those programs going. Facilities, obviously the remodel at Feller was significant, and now we have 2 portables, and now our early entrance kindergarten program is in the portable. Next year, also, we kind of had this fall in our laps. We were able to partner with a private outdoor preschool that is going to come in and be in the wetlands. And they're just going to use a small portion of the exhibit hall, mostly for the restroom and a little bit of put coats and things and storage. But mostly be outside. It's called Barnacles and Bees, and they're functioning in Kitsap County now. Actually, my granddaughter goes there, and she loves it. So we're really excited. They're going to do 2 days a week, starting this year, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm not exactly sure. I think they're trying one session, kind of a half-day session, 2 days a week. So they'll be going that way. So overall, again, we had 43 developmental preschool students who qualified this year. Those numbers are really consistent with what we've had in the past. And we had 12 early entrants. We decided that we kind of stopped recruiting. We didn't have a lot of other kids coming in anyway, so we developed a little bit of a waiting list this year because we wanted them 4 days a week, so we didn't have to go hybrid with that. So we could do the 4 days a week for all of the kids rather than to split them into 2 day a week. And what we ended up happening is a couple kids moved, and so we had 2 kids on a waiting list, and we just brought them in. So we ended up serving probably about 14 students, but 12 was our cap number that we were working with in that classroom. And then ECAP and Head Start this year were virtual, so they weren't on site at all this year. I have a really solid team of teachers and paras. We've really now worked together for several years, and every year, the last 2 years, we've done an inclusion grant that we've gotten through our ESD. It's a lot of PD for professional development. It also involves some virtual tours of other preschools and stuff with the intent, and the whole vision of this is to create an inclusionary experience for our kids with developmental disability, or our developmental preschool students. It's very difficult in preschool to do that. Without probably a tuition-based type program. So ECAP has a niche, and we can get some kids in ECAP, the state one, but really that program doesn't really fit all children's needs. It really is a set program for a specific kind of need. So, let's see. Well, that's where we're going and where we were this year. Up to this year, it's been basically working through ECAP, trying to work through the different rules and regulations of ECAP and trying to make our developmental preschool kids kind of fit into that mold. And what we really learned is that, kind of what I said, we really can use ECAP for a small number of children. About 14 children can, with disabilities or with an IEP, could go into ECAP and be successful within their group. So we had 43, right? So we have other kids that need inclusionary practices. They get their special education time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a mixing time, which will have the ECAP kids come in to the larger room at Feller and mix, and it'll be during choice time, and so they'll get that, some interaction time. And then I hope, if we can pass our levy and we can continue to invest in this program, I hope that we could add maybe a tuition-based preschool, where we spent some time this year with a consultant through the grant that we got, looking at some of them around the state. And there was one that, it was in a small community, and we said, well, how did you do this? And they said, we just opened our doors and let kids come in. We're like, well, maybe we could do that. I don't know. We'll have to look at that. But, and then others have tuition that they do a sliding scale tuition to bring in other kids. You know, some of the obviously concerns is that we have to look at competing with privates, and we don't want to, we're not in a position to want to compete. We want to partner. And so that's, you know, that's where we are with that. So that's really what I wanted to tell you. So now, if you have any questions or.
You know, as a mom of my son's starting preschool in the fall, and we're driving him to Gig Harbor 2 days a week. And I just hear it all the time from the moms in, you know, with the young kids. They're taking their kids to Port Orchard, they're taking their kids to Gig Harbor, and they're taking their kids to Shelton.
Yeah.
So there's a huge dearth of, you know, places that kids can go here. So I think it's exciting,
I
you know, the
agree.
more we can do,
There were a couple of preschools that, since COVID kind of shut them down, we
Yeah.
have some daycares now that
Right.
kind of do some kind of light preschool. Actually, our transitional kindergarten class, one of the parameters is that they can't have had any experience
Right.
in a preschool program. So we've kind of walked away from the daycare saying, don't call yourself a preschool. You know, it's not really robust, and so that, because otherwise we
Right.
can't qualify them for our traditional kindergarten, or our transitional kindergarten program. That's one of the state's big parameters, is that they can't have had any previous experience. So anyway, that's why we timed that program a bit to start it a little later, so that all of them fill, so we're not competing. Next year, we've timed that a little tighter. We should be able to start our transitional kindergarten in November rather than January. That'll give the kids another two months more of experience. And we're also, now that we've had 2 cohorts, we're gonna track them as we look at our kindergarten numbers and see how they're doing in kindergarten. Because I just know that they're already doing well in A-Ball school, and so I just know that they're gonna go into kindergarten and be fine. That way.
So Tom, you said it's like 43, 44, that's everybody, that's the developmental, the ECAP
Yeah, so-
together.
Yeah, developmental preschool involves child find, and so through the course of the school year, that's why they go 4 days a week. So one day, our staff is working on anybody that comes out of the birth to 3. And if you've ever heard of that before, there's a birth to 3 program that we don't actually do, but once they turn 3 years old, they come into the developmental preschool, and we have to qualify them at that point. So they're doing those kids that come out of that program, or any child that moves or comes into the area that may have a disability, we child find those, so we'll evaluate them. So that's how the numbers will start. We usually start with about 20 some, and then by the end of the school year, we're at 45, 44, 45.
What's the sort of, you mentioned the tuition-based preschool, what's the long-term, you know, when might that, you know, in the best possible scenario, when would that be able to be open?
Well, my best possible scenario, again, we'll have to talk,
Probably
but
wouldn't be until, the earliest would be the 22-23 school year.
if we can pass this levy, you know, it really is, these programs, you know, the funding on them isn't, there is no gen ed preschool, right? There's no, OSPI does not have gen ed preschool. So the only preschool they fund is our developmental
Right.
preschool.
Now, yeah.
ECAP's in a completely different thing, so.
And there is potentially things happening in Washington DC
Right.
to fully fund preschool for all children. And if that happens, that will be a revenue source to begin
And
programming.
then we could start to look at that. If it's tuition-based, we need to have somebody at the center who could really, we need at least a clerical person there to
Sure.
kind of manage it
Right,
first and
right.
help. And that's the expense the district would have to take on, and that's gonna have to be levy funded. And then, from that, we could start to put the wheels in place to figure out if we wanna charge and how much we wanna charge.
But that's like great information to even know as we talk about the levy to the voters, you know. I mean, that's something that I hadn't really heard or even thought about, like, oh, we could potentially be able to fund a preschool program here.
Which then, we would really have a truly integrated program for kids. Because we would still do Childline the way we do it, and we would still bring those kids in, but we would have a cluster of kids that we could pair with for that modeling and really prepare. So, it would be ideal. And the other thing I'll have to say is, we teamed with ECAP the last 2 years, but we were filling pretty much ECAP's program with our students with disabilities. So even though it was called a blended ECAP program, it had like 70% kids with IEPs in it. So what we're doing this year, it's truly blended, is I'm saying we're gonna provide 15 of your 30. So we'll be at 50%, and that's what the state considers as inclusionary in preschool. So we'll bring that program into alignment with what the state considers as true inclusion. But now we have to fill that gap with that other piece, which I'm thinking, unless the feds come through with some other kind of preschool program, probably a tuition-based.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very interested in preschool.
I
I
know.
bet you are.
Early education is really where it's at.
Well, and we know our kids in North Mason are not all getting to start from, you know, a place with lots of resources for themselves and their families. And we see that when we evaluate our children's readiness for kindergarten. Our kids are entering kindergarten, only about 30% are ready for what they need to do in kindergarten. And the more we can expand and provide quality preschool programs, the better opportunities our children have to be successful throughout their school careers. So we're gonna continue to focus on that and look for ways to make it happen.
Well, thank you for all your work that
Thank
you do. And I understand you're thinking about retiring.
I am.
Well, that's just not gonna happen.
Talk to my wife about it.
Yeah, we'll not talk about that right now.
No, we won't.
But, yes, the other thing I wanted to share with you that we're very, very excited about is, you know, we're committed to engaging our community in truly being, so that our schools truly are the center for the whole child, the whole school, within the whole community. And it's hard to do. It's been particularly hard to do this year. But we have a new tool that we're really excited about that will help us engage with our community. And we sent out our first message inviting people to participate this afternoon. This tool is called Thought Exchange. It lives in the cloud. It's, you know, all technology is so wonderful these days. There's so many things we can do. But with Thought Exchange, we can do a number of things. We can use it during a live program meeting when a bunch of people are in the room. But it allows us to use technology. We can ask a question, people can engage with their answers on their cell phones or whatever right there in the room. And we can immediately chart the responses, and they have an opportunity to respond to each other. And so it makes that time that much more efficient than, you know, in a traditional kind of meeting where a forum where we have to have people come up to the mic one at a time, and there's not really engagement going back and forth about ideas. This allows us to engage everybody and everybody's ideas. We also can do it by sending out a link and asking people to answer an open-ended question in a not real-time format. And that's what we did today. We sent out a question, and we sent it out via Blackboard, and we posted it on our Facebook page. People have been sharing it already. We sent out the invitation around 3-ish this afternoon, Jackie, and by 4, we had 78 responses.
I'm excited.
And those responses included people's first response to the question, as well as you can respond to other people's comments. And there's no identification of who's writing anything or responding here. And you can rate other people's comments. So when we gather and look at all the data that we've got, we can see what ideas are most important to most people in the community. What ideas do some people have but are not really that important to the rest of the community? So it really allows us to get deep input from everybody and to wade through the weeds. You know, sometimes when we're engaging and we're hearing about social media and people are engaging on social media, whoever puts stuff on and is the loudest makes it seem like that's what everybody thinks. This tool actually helps us weed through that and see what does everybody think and not just the people with the loudest voices. So I'm really excited about it. And our first question that we asked today was, as you think of our North Mason students' return to school in the fall, what thoughts and concerns do you have? And we're getting some great feedback already. When we close this exchange next Thursday, we will be able to immediately post everything everybody said for everybody to see. And we'll also use all that information as we do our planning, and it'll be really exciting to share and talk with you about it at our next board meeting.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So we can get a hold of that soon? I mean, I would love to see this. This sounds really very important.
Yeah, well, we sent you the question, we sent everybody that we send a Blackboard to the questions today, and we posted it on our Facebook. And then I'm the owner of that question, so I can't tell who answered it, but the computer also prevents somebody from, like, the same person at the same IP address putting in 100 of the same responses. The system all takes care of all of that and keeps it honest and pure. And so, but I can look in real time and see what responses we have so far, what are the trends. It's really pretty exciting, and it organizes all the information, so next Thursday when I'm done, then I don't need to pull a bunch of people in or spend hours or days figuring out how to put it in charts and everything. It's already done. I can just click a button and share it with our community.
So you mentioned Blackboard. Is that something that all of our email addresses are on?
If you have signed up, we send out, that's where we send out, they should be, right, Jackie? That's where we send out, you know, schools closing or, you know, whatever events we're sending out to people or reminders, you know, if it's a snow day, those kinds of things.
It's just so I got the email and I'm in it right now, and it's really cool.
And you're,
I shared my thoughts, and I'm looking at these other people's thoughts right now.
So we just
Yeah.
have to make sure that our emails are linked
Right.
to that.
It is on, like, if we have, if we shared it on Facebook.
If you
is
share it
that-
on Facebook, other people can take that link and go in and do it. Now,
Okay.
it will not allow somebody from the same IP address to keep, you know, trying to flood it with
And
their
is it
ideas.
worth mentioning if your email is connected to this, to Blackboard or to
If you
the,
signed up with the school district,
if you're signed up with, you can go
Yeah.
on here and voice your, that's really cool.
But
But
no, anybody can.
Anybody can go
can
on
do
it.
it. They
You
don't
can
have to
share it.
be-
You can share the link with anybody,
Okay,
and they can go do it. They can go to our Facebook page. That's where Jackie posted it as well. It's there.
yeah,
You just click on the link and answer the question.
cool.
So
yeah.
we go to the school Facebook page to get hooked up with
So
it?
she sent us an email. It's called
Jackie sent you
Thought
an email about it.
Nicole
Okay.
sent it.
Well, I
Alright.
really think that that's worth, like, if we share it one time, share it over and over, because it takes, when the community sees it one time, it takes them a while to catch on. So,
Well,
like,
and I
sharing
think
it, sharing it, sharing
Once
it.
we actually have results and people see it, then the
Yeah.
next time we're gonna get that much more.
Right, it'll
Yeah.
Because
explode,
it's really deep. The
Yeah.
level of information that we get is really incredibly deep. We're not sharing on the computer tonight, but I can pull up the reports I have so far at the end of the meeting if you want me to show you what it kinda looks like right now.
Okay.
So,
That's really cool.
it's really cool.
Yeah. All right, we're at capital projects.
Yeah, so we are finally finished with Bill Pugh Stadium.
Yay, we are, for real.
Oh,
You- 'cause
nice.
The statement got into the consent agenda, correct? And you guys looked at that, the letter of completion?
So we're good?
Yeah.
We're good.
We're
All right,
good.
this
We're
is-
going. We're done.
Yes.
Right.
That's so awesome.
This is an action item.
Oh, yeah, see, that's the one I was talking about, that,
Yep, right there.
yep,
So they need to approve
yes.
the
Just-
completion.
Yep, exactly.
We need to have a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the
No
capital
problem.
project as complete.
All right. Is there any discussion? Questions, concerns?
I'm just happy
Me too.
that it's done.
We are very happy.
It really looks nice.
Yeah.
It's
It really
beautiful.
does.
Oh, yeah.
It feels
It's
nice
beautiful.
being there.
Now we do, I'm really excited, one little addition that we will have is coming from a community member. We do have a community member who is making some really cool signage that, in metal, that's going to go on the stadium, you know, home of the Bulldogs.
Oh,
Yeah, so,
awesome.
Cool.
Those will be up in time for fall, I'm sure.
That's great.
Very cool.
All right.
Yep.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Motion passes. We are now at upcoming board letter columnists. June is Leanna. I have July. Arla has August, and Art has September, which means you probably have October.
Fine.
Okay?
I just want to make a comment on that. I just had an idea. And a very idea I have, of course, deserves the public. You know, I've got a connection with the Victor Improvement Club, and we haven't been meeting, you know, for a whole year. And I should, you know, depending on, you know, I mentioned the, you know, the finance bit, whatever will be the next quarter. Struck me that one of the things I could do is write a little preface, send it to the president of our organization, who's still in touch with everybody, and ask that it be distributed. You know, I'll put a little message myself on it, but ask that it be distributed among our members. And that would at least be a way for me to connect with some kind of community that I'm ordinarily, you know, Victor usually meets once a month. So I'm kind of there and sort of like your Quaker Oats, you know, face of the school. And this would be, I mean, that's, you know, completely gone by the wayside this last year. And it seems to me that I might be able to think about that and, you know, send that, but just send that to Victor. And I could probably do the same thing to my church community.
are you talking about your letter?
Whatever letter we get, I
Oh,
would just
yeah.
do a little preface.
Oh, okay.
But I'm
Pick
talking
it up.
about just
I was.
how
like a little-
can I, as an individual, stay in touch with my community? We're supposed to represent the thinking of the community, and when we're out of touch with via the pandemic, your Safeway contact is, you know, I mean, all those usual contacts are severed. And,
Right.
You could share that link too, the comment link.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm thinking out loud, these struck me as a couple things I could do. Maybe there's some things that each of us can think about, how can we connect with our special community? And maybe, it seems to me, take a board letter, you know, as your basic document, write a little preface for your particular community, and, you know, see that it gets out, and it continues to remind people that we exist. And I'm sure for a lot of people on Victor, you know, we've fallen completely off the map. And this reminds that the schools are going on, we're doing things. Oh, by the way, we're underfunded, but, you know, see why we need it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's important that we keep up those contacts, and I haven't figured out a way of doing that till just now.
I think
Great.
that's a great idea, John. We could all do that. So now we are at item 6, assurance of organizational performance and policy review. And the policy that we have here tonight is E4, school engagement, which is an action item. The school board adheres to the principles of policy governance. The board has written 4 sets of policies: ends, executive requirements, board superintendent relationships, and governance process. The ends policies describe the student outcomes the superintendent is charged with achieving. The executive requirement policies set the parameters within which the superintendent must operate as he or she leads the district toward the expected ends. The board superintendent relationships policies describe the way in which the board will oversee the superintendent's performance, and the superintendent will support the board. The governance policies describe how the board and its individual members shall conduct business, represent the community, and relate to each other. And tonight, our ends policy is number 4, school engagement, and there was a monitoring report there. I hope you all had an opportunity to review that. I think that it's important to note this one paragraph. Due to continued restrictions in response to COVID-19, we began the 2021 school year with most students engaged in remote learning within a hybrid model. I think it's important when you talk about school engagement to remember that under these extreme circumstances that we've all dealt with this year, all of us in our own lives and particularly in the school community, have really restricted school engagement, not only for staff, but for students and for community members and for parents. So as you read this monitoring report, I ask you to keep that in mind. I think it's a great report. I think our superintendent did a really good job of defining how we dealt with school engagement throughout the year, particularly in each of the buildings. So I would entertain a motion, and actually, why is my battery running low?
Mine died.
Oh, I'm hooked. I mean, I'm connected. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the, or to, I guess, what am I gonna say, Art? How to, that the superintendent is in compliant with school engagement E4.
So, Madam Chairman, I would like to move that we find the superintendent compliant with
See what he does? Thank
the
you.
precepts of E4
Okay.
as defined, or as explained partly in the monitoring report, but also from other information that we know.
Okay. I would welcome comments or discussion.
I think this is a historical document. Anybody does a history of our school,
There it is.
I mean, this is an absolute crucial break point. It'd be it's the educational equivalent of war. And it seems to me that the outline that is given in detail, the responses there, are really informative with respect to how we got prepared, how our leadership team, under our CEO, really met the emergency. And I'm impressed with this and think that it well represents an important turning point in our schools.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
I second that.
I would like to share that this report was a group project. Dr. Dan King has completed his superintendent credential program and recently graduated from his program at Seattle Pacific.
Oh, all right.
Awesome.
And
Congratulations.
his intent is to learn more about our policy governance procedure here in North
Okay.
Mason during this year. So he's gonna partner with me on doing some of the reports and some of the research. And this is the first one he did, and I really appreciated his insights and input from the building level as we, through email, created a report to you about where we are in this particular area this year.
Well, thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Do you want to say
Wonderful.
anything?
It was a great monitoring response. I thought it was very complete, and yet it detailed all of those issues that everyone has dealt with all year. So, thank you. Our school engagement response document, it's the board on the date shown above received and reviewed the official internal monitoring report of the above named policy submitted by the superintendent and superintendent-to-be, Dan King, at some point. Following its review of the report, based on the information provided, the board concludes, and this is where you all come in. Interpretation of policy. The superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends policy. The superintendent has failed to reasonably interpret the provisions of the ends policy. Comment?
I'm coming out in favor of reason.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, and then progress toward results. The district is making reasonable and satisfactory progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the policy. And the board offers the following commendations and/or cautions. I'm looking for a response from you all.
I would like to see in there a comment that reflects that this COVID year was, I don't want to call it like on a chart, and then coming back up. But it's not like a blip, because this was a big thing, but it was something that was very different, and that there was, very good and positive adjustment to it, and it's just really unknown as to, where that's going to take us and where we're going to go from that. But I just think you folks have done, an excellent job trying to deal with some really serious adversity.
Here, here.
However, you can write that better than I said it.
Okay.
And as part of that, dealing with unknowns and adjusting to the unexpected. I mean, it seems to me that that's very important, for administrative groups.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor. No more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, and now we are at a new policy, E6, educational equity.
Yeah, this is not something we have done since I have been here, adopt a new ends policy, but I have one for you. And I would like to present it tonight and come back to consideration of the adoption of this policy after you've had some time to mull it over and think about it. This is a very important policy for us to take at this time, and we spent, as an administrative team, a lot of time researching, looking at other existing policies in the state. So even though this is a requirement, we do not have a recommended policy yet, but we need it to be in place as we start a new school year. And so we've looked at best practice around the state and other places. We've looked at the definitions of what are expected, and we've really soul searched about how do we best serve and meet the needs of all of our kids so that we meet the definition of equity, which is that each child gets whatever that child needs to be successful. Not everybody gets the same, but everybody gets what they need. And so like I said, we worked really hard. I think this is an outstanding result, but I would like you to have more than just the few minutes in the meeting to mull and consider. So if you have had the opportunity to check through it already, if you have questions that we can answer tonight so that you can think more and be prepared. Tentatively, Jackie and I have saved a place on the calendar for next year's first report on this agenda, which would be in April. We do have a plan in place related to both our learning recovery plan that we submitted and was approved by the state, and to the implementation of an equity policy, that we will be examining school data from a variety of sources multiple times a year through a lens of equity, through a lens of the students that we've identified who are most in need of supports, and making sure that we're doing the right things so that each child gets what they need to succeed. And so by the time we get to April, we will have had multiple data-based conversations and opportunities to adjust our practice so that what I am able to report on will be real work and real results or not, that show how we're moving forward to support kids in this very important way.
Now, is this something that the state mandated, or is this something that we've initiated?
There will be a mandate.
Mhm.
There was a requirement from the federal government in our learning recovery plan to have in place a district education equity policy and an equity practice for examining data.
Mhm.
And so we did put those things in place. We are asking the board to adopt this policy to ensure that we are moving forward to best serve all of our kids and to make sure that we create a school district that doesn't have hidden barriers for some kids and not for others.
So we're ahead of the curve.
We're trying.
Well, I think that, I think I'm right about that, and I think this is commendable. I've looked it over. We're all hearing about this in a very ideologized form. I've been reviewing my knowledge of history and have found it lacking with respect, I feel I'm just coming to grips with the meaning of institutional racism and other things of that nature. This is a cool report. It way turns down the heat. And as far as there was a great program on, David Bernstein has his program on, what is it, Sundays? Where he interviews, various people in the news, Bill Gates, et cetera, et cetera. This last time he interviewed Henry, the Gates at Harvard that does all the Black history. I'm blocking on his name for a moment. I got his book right after the program. I haven't finished reading it, but I'm reading a number of things that are converging on the same point. And they're pointing out systematic failures, not a matter of your attitude, my attitude, kumbaya, let's all get together, but how we're put together legally and policy-wise. And from what I could tell from my preliminary readings on this, and I don't pretend to be an expert on it, and then I look at this policy, wow. It seems to me that there's, what I'm reading about history and the points that they're raised by this policy seem to come together. So I think that this is a real heads up. I think we all need to take a look at this, and I really commend our CEO, Dana, for being ahead of the curve on this, because this is a very important thing. And just like the budget, this is another thing that could go terribly awry if we're not right on the dime with respect to communicating in cool language that nevertheless locates this on the map, what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because I think the reasons for doing it are really well spelled out in this preliminary plan that we've got. If I knew more, I would offer any kind of different criticisms. But one of the irritations I have with you, Superintendent Rosenbach, is I find so little to criticize, and it really bothers me. But I think this looks really like we're getting ahead of the curve, and I encourage everybody to study it.
Does this connect with the Senate Bill 5044, or is that's what will follow later? Or will it have anything to do with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm really pleased with this. It's a really meaty policy, and
Here,
there
here.
are so many bullets in here that
Yeah.
are totally measurable. So,
Absolutely, and it does seem really long, but we went through it repeatedly with the administrative team